I had an assignment, which was to interview Albert Schweitzer, and I skipped it and went out with you. So I had to marry her.
Gregory Peck was not just a Hollywood star. He embodied an era of actors who could captivate audiences with nothing more than a stern gaze, and then leave them with a deep conviction in justice and human dignity. From the charm of Roman Holiday to the unwavering integrity of To Kill a Mockingbird, Peck broke free from the mold of a handsome leading man to become the moral symbol of American cinema. His resonant, steady voice once echoed like a reminder of what was right. His presence turned films into touchstones of humanity, while his steadfastness inspired generations of artists and audiences alike. Gregory Peck was more than an actor. He was a benchmark of integrity, the moral compass of Hollywood, and a man who dared to choose the hardest path, to live true to his values, even when it meant enduring pain and loss. For over half a century, he stood firm between the glare of fame and the shadows of his private struggles, transforming both tragedy and conviction into unforgettable art. Yet behind that unyielding image lay a life fractured by wounds deeper than any role he ever played on screen. Let us revisit that brilliant yet turbulent journey to see just how many silent losses marked the life of Gregory Peck. Gregory Peck was born on April 5, 1916, in La Jolla, California, into what seemed like a stable family. His father, Gregory Pearl Doc Peck, was a pharmacist. His mother, Bernice May Bunny, of English-Scottish descent, was a responsible and devoted woman. But that peace was short-lived. When Peck was only 2, his parents first separated. In 1921, at a time when divorce was still rare, his mother filed for it, along with serious accusations that her husband abused both wife and child, hurled cruel insults at her, and even prevented her from seeing a doctor when her appendix ruptured. Bunny also requested and received a restraining order, though Peck later denied it outright, insisting that never happened. Biographers generally believe the accusations had merit. In those turbulent years, young Gregory was shuttled back and forth, sometimes with his father, sometimes with his mother in St. Louis. At just 6 years old, he once boarded a train alone for a long journey to reunite with her. Peck later recalled, "I wasn't afraid at all. It was a grand adventure. Amid family chaos, small moments like that became rare, bright memories." During his time with his mother and stepfather, Peck found comfort in a special companion, a black and brown mutt named Bud. With Bud, he discovered simple joys, riding his bike, wandering carefree, sharing peaceful days. But in 1924, when he was only 8, Peck called it the worst year of my life. He learned there was no Santa Claus, no Easter Bunny, and Bud was gone. His grandmother consoled him by saying the dog had run away, but Peck sensed the crueler truth, that his father had agreed to give Bud away after neighbors complained of barking. For the next 40 years, he couldn't help but glance back whenever he saw a black and brown dog, wondering, could it be Bud? The cascade of losses made Gregory Peck withdraw into himself. He was sent to St. John's Military Academy, then returned to live with his grandmother, Catherine Ashe. She became his last true anchor, taking him to the movies every week. In the dark of the theater, as the projector's beam lit up the screen, Peck found a world of justice, heroes, and warmth that real life lacked. But fate was merciless once more. His grandmother died of stomach cancer. Peck, just 10 years old, lay in the adjoining room night after night, hearing her moans of pain. By day, he sat reading the newspaper aloud to her, clinging to her last warmth. Many years later, he confessed that those sounds still haunt me to this day. With no one left to rely on, Gregory returned to his father's house, a place with family yet stripped of connection, a home that felt cold and hollow. He grew quiet, masking his fragility with a straight posture and solemn demeanor, a protective shell he would carry throughout his life. As he grew older, he attended San Diego High School, then San Diego State Teachers College, where he joined track, debate, and drama. It was there that Peck first discovered the power of his voice. It could move people. It could connect, something he had longed for from his father. In 1936, Peck transferred to UC Berkeley to study pre-med, but in a speech class, standing under stage lights for the first time, he discovered what his childhood had lacked: listening, empathy, connection. Professor Edwin Duer recognized his gift and urged Peck to abandon medicine for the arts. Peck chose that path, despite the uncertain future it promised. When Gregory Peck left Berkeley, he carried not a medical degree but a fragile dream of the stage, and just $160 tucked in his coat pocket. He chose New York, a city so unforgiving that at times he slept on benches in Central Park to save money on rent. By day, Peck survived through odd jobs, handing out flyers, guiding tours at Rockefeller Center, even posing as a model. By night, he studied acting with quiet persistence, waiting for a break. That break came when he won a scholarship to the neighborhood playhouse, the prestigious school that had shaped generations of American actors. Under the guidance of Sanford Meisner, Peck learned to live truthfully in each role, so that audiences felt real emotion rather than performance. His training with Martha Graham taught him to use his body as a second language on stage. Yet even as he reached for his dream, the shadows of childhood misfortune returned. During a rehearsal, Martha Graham pulled at his back in a stretching exercise, and a chilling pop rang out. Peck had suffered a slipped disc and spinal misalignment, forcing him to wear a brace for years and endure chronic pain for the rest of his life. The accident, which might have ended his fledgling career, instead became a turning point. It kept him from being drafted into World War II, but gave him the chance to dedicate himself fully to stage and screen, just as Hollywood was desperate for fresh faces to replace stars who had gone off to war. Gregory Peck began on stage. His first role in The Morning Star, 1942, closed after only 12 performances. Subsequent plays like The Willow and I left little impression, but failure did not break his resolve. It only deepened his patience. Soon, Hollywood took notice of the tall, lean actor. In 1944, Peck landed his first leading role in Days of Glory. By his own admission, his performance was stiff, struggling to adjust from stage to screen. But his very next film, The Keys of the Kingdom, earned him his first Academy Award nomination. In less than 6 years, he would collect 4 nominations, an ascent few of his contemporaries could match. What set Peck apart was his refusal to follow the Hollywood formula. When MGM offered him a 7-year contract to mold him into the next Clark Gable, Peck declined. He wanted the freedom to choose roles, to test himself with scripts carrying moral weight. The gamble paid off. By the late 1940s, Peck was one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood, commanding $100,000 per film, a staggering sum for the era. From a pre-med student wandering New York with no safety net, Gregory Peck entered cinema with a presence unlike the brash stars of his time. Not loud, not ostentatious, but steady, composed, and enduring. Those hard-won beginnings laid the foundation for the image that America would later come to revere. From the 1940s onward, Gregory Peck quickly established himself as one of Hollywood's brightest leading men. After his somewhat tentative screen debut in Days of Glory, 1944, he earned his first Best Actor Oscar nomination just a year later with The Keys of the Kingdom. His rise was meteoric. Within less than a decade, Peck had amassed 4 Oscar nominations and was already regarded as the very face of integrity and dignity on the silver screen. He dared to take on difficult roles like in Duel in the Sun, 1946, and shook America with Gentleman's Agreement, 1947, a film that confronted anti-Semitism head-on and went on to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. Then came 12 O'Clock High, 1949, which brought him yet another Oscar nomination and confirmed that Peck was not just a handsome leading man, but an actor of remarkable depth. The 1950s and 1960s marked the peak of his career. Roman Holiday, 1953, opposite Audrey Hepburn, became a timeless romantic classic, while The Guns of Navarone, 1961, and Cape Fear, 1962, showcased his versatility across genres. Yet all of these were merely preludes to his defining role. Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, 1962. The film earned 8 Oscar nominations and finally brought Peck the Best Actor statuette after 4 previous misses. More than an award, Finch became America's moral compass, so revered that the American Film Institute later named him the greatest movie hero of all time. Harper Lee, author of the original novel, was so moved by Peck's performance that she gifted him her late father's pocket watch, acknowledging that he had truly embodied the man who inspired the character. Even into the 1970s, when many of his contemporaries had faded, Peck retained his box office power. The Omen, 1976, a supernatural horror film, grossed over $100 million worldwide, proving that even in middle age, his name was still a guarantee of success. He closed his career with roles that carried symbolic weight, a cameo in the remake of Cape Fear, 1991, and his final screen appearance as Father Mapple in Moby Dick, 1998, drawing a curtain on more than half a century in the spotlight. Across a career that spanned over 50 years, Gregory Peck left behind a rare image of a Hollywood star. Elegant yet principled, fearless enough to confront society's hardest questions. He stood as living proof that cinema is not merely entertainment. It can be a voice for justice and human dignity. While the silver screen confirmed Gregory Peck as one of Hollywood's greatest leading men, behind closed doors, he faced a very different journey, one marked by fractures, trials, and losses that could never be mended. Gregory Peck's first marriage came in 1942 to Greta Kukkonen, a quiet and composed Finnish-born woman. Together they had 3 sons, Jonathan, Stephen, and Carrie Paul. Peck adored his children, longing to give them the kind of secure childhood he himself had never known. Yet that hope was quickly tested. According to Michael Friedland's biography of Gregory Peck, marital tensions flared repeatedly. Greta struggled to cope with the demands of her husband's rising career and the relentless pressures he carried to remain a star. The strain escalated to the point where, at just 34, Peck believed he was having a heart attack. Medication and alcohol became temporary crutches as he staggered through the weight of those years. After one especially bitter quarrel, he left home for a small cabin in the Mojave Desert, where he lived in isolation for a month. It was there that Peck confronted a painful truth. He would never find happiness in this marriage, yet he clung to it, out of duty, out of appearances, and above all, for the sake of his children. They remained together through the filming of Roman Holiday, 1953, even attempting to hold on to the semblance of a family. But the cracks were irreparable. In 1954, the Associated Press reported that the couple had formally separated. Greta filed for divorce, citing intense mental suffering, humiliation, and shame. In a later interview with People, Peck admitted that what haunted him most was not the failed marriage, but the future of his 3 sons. For 3 weeks, I felt terrible only about the children. I holed up in a hotel room like a bear in a hollow log, he recalled. After 13 years, the marriage ended in sorrow. And though Gregory Peck and Greta managed to remain civil, continuing to share responsibility for raising their children, the emotional wound of that first marriage lingered, an ever-present shadow trailing the brilliance of his career. If his first marriage left deep fractures, meeting Veronique Pisani opened an entirely different chapter in Gregory Peck's life. In 1952, while passing through Paris on his way to Rome to film Roman Holiday, he met Veronique, a young journalist for François. That brief interview became destiny. Veronique even skipped a prestigious lunch with Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Schweitzer, the 1952 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, just to sit across from Peck. Years later, Peck would joke, "You made the right choice, my girl." Their love began over a Parisian lunch, and only a few years later, on New Year's Eve of 1955, immediately after Peck's divorce was finalized, they were married. Their union lasted nearly half a century and brought them 2 children, Anthony, 1956, and Cecilia, 1958. But more importantly, it was a partnership in the truest sense, where Veronique was not only a wife but also a collaborator, a lifelong companion at his side. Together, they became one of Hollywood's most enduring power couples. Veronique was known for her effortless elegance, often seen in designs by Yves Saint Laurent, Balenciaga, and Givenchy. Their daughter Cecilia once said, "They loved each other, and you could feel it. His eyes were always on her." Their style reflected that love. But their love went far beyond glances. Over nearly 50 years, Peck and Veronique helped raise $50 million for the American Cancer Society, co-founded the Inner City Cultural Center, and contributed to the Los Angeles Music Center, turning their names into symbols of humanity and generosity. Their closest friends included legends like Frank Sinatra, Sidney Poitier, and Lauren Bacall, who affectionately referred to Peck and Veronique as the hospitable heart of Hollywood. They lived a love that was not only tender, but also expansive. A marriage with the elegance of Parisian style and the spirit of American humanism. One that endured until Gregory Peck drew his last breath in 2003. While Gregory Peck's career seemed untouchable, his personal life carried a far sadder tone. From broken relationships to sons who could never step into his towering shadow, the children of this legendary figure often endured tragic fates. For nearly half a century, Peck found rare emotional stability in Hollywood through his marriage to Veronique Pisani. Yet even such a steadfast love could not shield him from the deepest wound of his life, the unbearable pain of a father. Jonathan Peck, born from Gregory's first marriage to Greta Kukkonen, was bright, sensitive, and driven from an early age. A track star at school, he was ambitious enough to spend 2 years in Tanzania and later served 6 years in the Marine Corps Reserve. After graduating from Occidental College, Jonathan launched his media career with a radio position at KNX Los Angeles, where he worked for 3 years before moving on as a local TV reporter for KCOY-TV in Santa Barbara. Later, he joined the Peace Corps, returning to Tanzania as a volunteer, and afterward continued working in media and radio back in the U.S. He was a young man full of purpose, reflecting, in many ways, his father's own sense of moral duty. But beneath the admirable resume lay a deeply tormented spirit. Jonathan suffered from a vascular condition that left him in constant pain and fatigue. His heartache only deepened after a painful breakup, worsened further when his former girlfriend took her own life. The weight of grief and psychological scars grew unbearable, pulling him steadily into despair. Gregory Peck never abandoned his son. According to Michael Friedland's biography, he gave Jonathan money, urged him to see a therapist, and was always ready to listen. Yet some wounds even a father's love cannot heal. On June 26, 1975, Jonathan, only 30 years old, ended his life with a gun. The news reached Gregory while he was in France, and it was like a knife through his heart. He collapsed inward, retreating into silence for 2 long years, unable to step onto a film set. In a later interview, Peck admitted, "The greatest regret of my life, one I'll carry forever, is that I was in France instead of at home. I am certain that if I had been in Los Angeles, he would have called me. He often came by to talk. If only he could have picked up the phone and said, 'I can't go on,' I would have said, 'Stay right there. I'm coming.'" Veronique Pisani, his second wife, who stood by him through the darkest time, described the grief as insurmountable. She watched Peck torment himself with questions that had no answers. What kind of father was he? Where had he gone wrong? What could he have done differently? She said the only way he managed to stand up again was through the strength of the family that remained. From then on, Peck was no longer the flawless hero audiences adored on screen, but a father broken by loss. Perhaps it was through this wound that he came to understand more deeply than ever the fragility of human life, an understanding that made his performances resonate with such raw, authentic emotion. Jonathan's death nearly destroyed Gregory Peck. He withdrew from filmmaking for 2 full years, halting all artistic pursuits even at the height of his fame. Instead, he sought therapy, struggling daily to escape the torment that consumed him. The wound never truly healed. Though he later returned to the screen deep down, Peck remained forever a father living with loss. After 2 years engulfed in darkness following Jonathan's death, Gregory Peck slowly returned to work, but fate seemed unwilling to release him. Just as he was beginning to stand again, another devastating blow struck, this time from his second son, Anthony, affectionately known as Tony. Tony once made headlines when he married Cheryl Tiegs, the supermodel and beauty icon of the 1970s. Yet the glamour faded quickly. The marriage collapsed after a short time, leaving Tony adrift and directionless. He turned to alcohol and drugs as a false comfort. What looked like escape was, in truth, self-destruction. The media never spared him. Headlines about addiction, divorce, and failed recoveries piled up into a wall of scandal that left Tony ashamed, driving him further into the shadows. The greatest tragedy, however, was the widening gulf between him and the father he so admired. Gregory Peck, the man the world revered as Hollywood's moral compass, was forced to confront bitter disappointment within his own family. Even so, he never let go. More than once, Peck devoted himself to getting Tony into rehab, accompanying him patiently, trying every possible way to salvage his son's life. On screen, he was the embodiment of integrity and hope. Behind closed doors, he was simply a father clinging to the fragile belief that he could rescue his child from ruin. But the ending was merciless. In 1996, Tony died of cancer at just 49, closing the chapter on a troubled life. For Gregory Peck, it was the second wound carved into a father's heart, a wound that would never heal. He would later admit that he could shoulder the weight of fame, endure the pressures of an entire career, but nothing was more unbearable than having to bury yet another son. If Jonathan left behind an unhealed wound and Anthony was tied to downfall, then Stephen, Gregory Peck's second son, brought a very different chapter to the family's story. Born in 1946, Stephen was studying film at Northwestern University when he received his draft notice. While his peers were making plans for the future, he was preparing for the battlefield in Vietnam. In the Marine Corps, Stephen rose to the rank of lieutenant, enduring the brutal years of combat and returning with memories that would never fade. Gregory Peck, who had publicly opposed the war, still told friends that he was immensely proud of his son. And the truth was, the war did not break Stephen, it shaped him. Returning to the U.S. in 1970, Stephen continued his film studies at USC and later ventured into television with the program That's Hollywood. He even collaborated with his father on a recording of the New Testament, a project that created a special bond between them. But soon, the echoes of war spoke louder. Stephen stepped away from the spotlight, dedicating himself to social work, making films about veterans and working directly to support them. He eventually became the head of a nonprofit organization aiding homeless veterans, transforming his painful experiences into a mission of healing for others. In Stephen, the public could glimpse Gregory Peck himself, principled, committed, and always standing beside those who needed protection. The youngest son from Gregory Peck's first marriage, Cary Paul Peck, born in 1949, did not follow the path of art or the military. Instead, he turned toward media and social activism. Cary stayed away from Hollywood headlines and never sought the spotlight, but he quietly pursued ideals of community change. In the 1980s, Cary even entered local politics in Los Angeles, carrying with him the legacy of integrity his father had built. Though he never became a prominent figure in film or government, he made his mark as a media and social worker, keeping the Peck name associated with decency and civic responsibility. Among his 5 children, his youngest and only daughter was the gentle light in his life. I'm the youngest of his 5 children and the only daughter. He always wanted a daughter, and I think we had a very special relationship, the kind only a father and daughter can share, Cecilia told HuffPost in 2016. From an early age, Cecilia grew up in her father's arms on film sets. She once followed him to the set of To Kill a Mockingbird and remembered the wrap party at Universal, where he carried her in his arms as they danced together. At their Los Angeles home, Peck maintained simple family rituals, driving his children to school every morning, sharing dinner at night, and taking Sunday outings to the beach in a station wagon packed with kids, dogs, footballs, and frisbees. When filming far from home, the family often traveled with him. Cecilia once spent her entire 3rd grade year in London. We traveled a lot, she recalled, living in different states and countries for weeks or months at a time. In her teenage years, Cecilia admitted she was rebellious, often turning down her father's lunch invitations because she was too busy. Peck never scolded her, but the sadness in his eyes stayed with her. In her mid-20s, when she decided to pursue acting, father and daughter grew close again. Peck advised her to study theater at Princeton in order to really understand the craft, advice she carried with her always. Cecilia made her debut in My Best Friend is a Vampire, 1987, then appeared in Wall Street and most notably in The Portrait, 1993, where she played Gregory Peck's daughter on screen. The role earned her a Golden Globe nomination and gave her the chance to learn directly from her father. I saw how he respected everyone on set, from the director to the catering crew. But like her father, Cecilia soon chose a more humanitarian path: documentary filmmaking. She directed A Conversation with Gregory Peck, 1999, capturing her father's private moments. Shut Up and Sing, 2006, about the Chicks, and Brave Miss World, 2013, telling the story of Lenore Abergil, the Israeli beauty queen who bravely spoke out about her rape. The latter earned her an Emmy nomination and proved that Gregory Peck's spirit of standing up for justice lived on in his daughter. Beyond her career, Cecilia built a family of her own. In 1999, she and her husband, Daniel Vaughn, welcomed their son Harper, named after author Harper Lee. In 2002, they had a daughter, Ondine. In Cecilia, Gregory Peck found his most beautiful continuation, a daughter who inherited his compassion and carried it into the modern world through film. No one ever doubted Gregory Peck's devotion as a father, yet within him lay a hidden corner that few ever knew. It was not a new tragedy, but a love long buried, a memory he kept guarded for nearly half a century. In 1945, while filming Alfred Hitchcock's Spellbound alongside Ingrid Bergman, amid scenes thick with psychological tension, the two discovered a rare kinship. It was not a publicity stunt nor a fleeting attraction, but a true, fierce love, one that was ultimately impossible. Both Peck and Bergman were married, and in the rigid climate of Hollywood at the time, their flame could only burn quietly, in silence. Crew members whispered that some mornings they would arrive late. Their hair tousled, leaving little room for doubt. What is striking is that Peck never turned it into scandal. He chose silence for decades, carrying the memory as something sacred. It wasn't until 1987, at the age of 71, that he finally admitted in an interview, "I really loved her. I think I should stop there. She was like a beautiful Swedish rose. I was young, she was young. We worked together long and hard for weeks." It was not a betrayal of the past, but a belated confession, at once tender and painful. Most importantly, both Peck and Bergman knew when to stop. They went their separate ways, yet the memory endured, proof that even America's moral compass had once trembled before a forbidden love, choosing to keep it as a deeply human secret within his heart. Gregory Peck, a man of strength and resolve, yet even an icon cannot resist the laws of time, and in 2003, Hollywood was forced to bid farewell to one of its greatest faces. In June 2003, Hollywood fell silent. Gregory Peck took his final breath at his Los Angeles home, beside his wife Veronique, after nearly half a century of marriage. He passed away peacefully in his sleep, at the age of 87. His spokesperson recalled in an obituary published by The Telegraph. His wife Veronique was by his side, holding his hand, and he just fell asleep. He had grown old and frail. He wasn't really ill. He simply lived his life fully and died of old age. A simple farewell, yet enough to move millions to tears. On June 16th, his funeral was held at the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels, transforming that sacred space into a historic moment. Friends, colleagues, and admirers gathered, as though all of old Hollywood had reunited to say goodbye. Among those present were Lauren Bacall, Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, Harrison Ford, Callista Flockhart, Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie. From classic film stars to pop icons, all came. Proof that Gregory Peck had transcended the boundaries of acting to become a cultural symbol. The most moving eulogy came from Brock Peters, who had played Tom Robinson, the black man defended by Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. The image was profoundly symbolic. A man who once embodied injustice on screen, now standing to bid farewell to the co-star who had given life to justice for an entire generation. Peck's death was widely regarded as the end of an era. Frank Pearson, president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, told the Los Angeles Times, "He was the last of the true aristocrats of old Hollywood." Jack Valenti, president of the Motion Picture Association of America, called him a towering figure in the history of motion pictures who made a series of films that illuminated the great truths of character. The American Film Institute also pledged to preserve and promote Peck's legacy for generations to come. He was remembered not only for his immortal roles, but also for his compassion. From publicly opposing the Vietnam War to raising funds for cancer research, Peck bound his life to causes larger than himself. He once humbly remarked, "I'm not a do-gooder. I'm embarrassed to be classified as a humanitarian. I just participate in activities I believe in." It was precisely that belief that carried his image far beyond the screen, turning him into one of Hollywood's rare moral beacons amid constant upheaval. Gregory Peck's passing left more than just a void on the silver screen. It left behind a moral standard for Hollywood and for American society as a whole. His portrayal of Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird remains enshrined by the American Film Institute as the greatest movie hero of all time, a lasting emblem of justice, courage, and human dignity. Peck's legacy also lay in his integrity off-screen. He publicly opposed war, defended freedom of speech, advocated for cancer research, and dedicated himself to community causes. More than a star, he once served as president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and was deeply involved in humanitarian organizations, raising tens of millions of dollars for healthcare and the arts. This image convinced the public that he was not only playing heroes on screen, he lived as one. Even after his death, those values have been preserved. In 2023, the Peck family auctioned some of his personal items, including his To Kill a Mockingbird script. His son, Anthony Peck, emphasized he never took a job for money. He did what he wanted to do and cared about. And frankly, that was helping people. Harper Lee once said that the role of Atticus Finch gave Gregory Peck the chance to play himself, because he was that man. Part of the proceeds was donated to the charity World Central Kitchen, continuing the humanitarian spirit Peck left behind. Today, when younger audiences discover Roman Holiday, The Guns of Navarone, or To Kill a Mockingbird, they encounter not just a classic Hollywood leading man, but a figure who turned his entire career into living proof of the power of faith and righteousness. Gregory Peck left his mark not only as one of the finest actors of classic Hollywood, but as a symbol of dignity and moral courage. On screen, He embodied steadfast heroes, from Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird to roles that helped define an entire era of cinema. Off-screen, he endured loss, private sorrows, and hidden struggles, yet lived with integrity and compassion. That is what made Gregory Peck a true hero. Not because he was perfect, but because he dared to live fully with everything life gave him, from glory to tragedy. 2 decades after his passing, the light he left still shines, reminding us that cinema can be more than entertainment. It can uplift the human spirit. In a world of constant turmoil, is there anyone today brave enough to become the Atticus Finch of a new generation? If you have ever watched Gregory Peck on screen, you likely carry a moment you will never forget. A look, a line, or simply the quiet strength he brought to every role. Which performance or memory of Gregory Peck has touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Perhaps your memory is the very thing another viewer is searching for. And if you found this journey meaningful, don't hesitate to hit like, subscribe, and join us as we continue to uncover the untold stories of Hollywood's greatest legends.